FilmBusters.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is Ben from FilmBusters flying solo with today's very brief, exclusive podcast. Yes, this is the exception to the norm. I am doing this podcast because I was very, very kindly offered the chance to cover Once Upon a Time in Hollywood for the guys over at We Have a Hulk. So for those of you who do not follow them, get following them on Twitter now. Go and listen to their podcast. Go and sign up to all of their notifications because they are a great bunch of guys. And they gave me the opportunity to bring this review to you. So 3 weeks ahead of the official release, I trotted over to Leicester Square Odeon on Monday night to see Quentin Tarantino's ninth film, or is it 10th film? I would call it his 10th film. He calls it his 9th film because he believes Kill Bill is 2 films, but we won't split hairs. He advertised it as his 9th film. So as the lights went down and 3 hours of new Quentin Tarantino action played out, what did I think? So this is the spoiler-free Once Upon a Time ... in Hollywood review. So, first things first, just to give it the quick overview, the film is set in 1969 during the death of the golden age of Hollywood, and I say the death quite potently because it really was the death of Sharon Tate, Roman Polanski's wife, and Jay Sebring and others who were at the house on CeeLo Drive that brought about the death of the golden age of Hollywood and signaled the dawn of the new wave Hollywood. Tarantino goes to great pains to show how much he cares for all of the television stars from the 50s and 60s that at the time were considered the movie stars in many ways in LA, in Hollywood. Leonardo DiCaprio plays Rick Dalton, who was one of the main stars of 1950s television, fictional. He was the lead in a show called Bounty Law, and the film follows him and his stunt double, Cliff Booth, played by Brad Pitt, in the twilight stage of his career, really. It's essentially about them trying to find their place in the world now that the roles are drying up. DiCaprio's getting older. He's sinking further into alcoholism, further into depression, and the fact that Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski have moved into the house next door to his only serves to remind him that there's a new dawn coming, and he doesn't really think that he's part of it. But Brad Pitt is his, reliable sidekick, and he keeps telling him, hey, it's okay, it's going to be okay, you're going to do it. And throughout the movie, we see a number of scenarios present themselves, which perhaps show hope for DiCaprio and his way forward. But things obviously don't go entirely to plan because there is a Manson family on the scene. And the 3 hours play out, and we see what the Manson family are getting up to, what Sharon Tate is getting up to, but crucially, what Rick Dalton and his friend Cliff Booth are getting up to. So, stylistically, this is Tarantino written all over it, although it's perhaps not quite as flashy and showy as some of his previous films. There is a hell of a lot of time wasted on irrelevant things such as driving scenes. I think there probably is about 7 or 8 minutes worth of driving scenes in this film without any dialogue, all told. There's a lot of posing, there's a lot of neon lights, there's a lot of advertisements, there's a lot of movie cinemas, there's a lot of cutbacks to old movies, old TV shows, posters, quotes from movie moguls. There's a lot of love and adoration for Hollywood in there. Okay, there is. So, that aside, what about the plot? The plot is all over the place. It's not necessarily in a bad way, but it's chopped up. It follows different characters in different stages of their life, and it switches focus at the drop of a hat, much like Pulp Fiction, much like Inglourious Bastards. There's a lot of collaborative scenes between Pitt and DiCaprio, but there's also a lot of singular scenes. And when it's just the two of them doing singular scenes, it works really well, just as well as when they're together. The problem is, it all goes on for too long, and I don't really know what it's saying. I think Tarantino thinks it's saying something really strong and potent, and I guess for him it is, and I guess as a tale of Hollywood and old Hollywood it is, but the reality is it's not as important as he believes it is. We are watching two white guys, by modern day standards, Republican white guys, whining and complaining about the fact, well, not so much Brad Pitt's character, DiCaprio's, yeah, but whining and complaining about the fact that their careers are over. And despite the humour that's in there, I don't have much sympathy for them overall. DiCaprio is watchable as always, but I don't have a lot of sympathy for them. Tarantino's come under a lot of criticism because he's been told that he's sort of cut out the Sharon Tate figure. He's not given Margot Robbie a lot to work with. And I kind of have to defend him a little bit because it's not really about her, even though she had some colour to the texture of what was going on at the time. It's not a film about the Sharon Tate murders. It's not a film about Charles Manson. It just so happens to include Sharon Tate and the Manson family in it. That being said, she barely has any dialogue. The dialogue that she does have, it makes her out to be very ditzy, very Barbie doll, not really having a brain for herself. She's an object of fun, to be poked fun at. She's talked about by Damian Lewis's Steve McQueen as someone he could have fucked, but he doesn't stand a chance. Outside of Sharon Tate, the way women are presented overall is not very flattering. The Manson girls, of course, considered enemies, considered evil people, but they're portrayed in such a way that you would be very, very happy to know that some bad things happen to some of them. The wife characters, I won't say which wife characters, but some of the characters have wives, and some of the things that may or may not have happened to them and the circumstances around that is quite troubling. There's one character in the film who it's rumoured that he may have murdered his wife. We don't know whether he did or not, but the fact is we are encouraged to root for this character, despite the fact that he may have been a murderer. We also see women dropped just like that after terrible things have happened, so that men can get together and be men and talk about what it is to be men and to lament the past. It's a very interesting film. It needs a second watch. It's layered. It is layered. It's not a stupid film. Its heart is in its right place, in that Tarantino wanted to make a love letter to this era of Hollywood, and its heart is very much in its right place. I just think he's gone about this in a very clumsy way. He's gone for some easy laughs that he doesn't normally do. He's gone for a lot of stupid dialogue, which he doesn't normally do. And his violence, when it inevitably comes, is almost comic book-like. It's not the violence we've come to associate with Tarantino. And the scene in which most of the violence plays out is so extreme and so ridiculous, you will never forget it. But I don't know if that's a good thing. I don't know if you'll never forget it for a good reason or for a bad reason. It makes a mockery of some things that did actually happen, but some people may say that it also vindicates, well, not vindicates, but it sort of acts as redemption for some things that happen. The greatest issue with the film is that at 3 hours long, if it's a good film, you don't notice the runtime. And I did notice the runtime. In fact, there was a point when I realised we were only halfway through the film, and I thought, oh God, how much longer can this go on for? That being said, I felt the same way about Inglourious Basterds the first time I saw it, and now Inglourious Basterds is top 3 Quentin Tarantino for me. I don't know if Once Upon a Time in Hollywood will make it into the top 3 for me, but I would certainly consider it to be quite close to the top. The issue, the biggest issue, is that Tarantino is starting to seem a bit like Rick Dalton, a little bit like DiCaprio's character, like a man who has come to the end of his time, a dinosaur who isn't fitting in with the world around him anymore. And I think it's telling that he wanted to tell this story set 50 years ago, when PC culture wasn't around, when diversity wasn't around, when it was about men being men on screen. I think it's very, very telling, and when you go and see this film yourselves, I think you'll be able to tell for yourselves which side of the coin you'll fall on. I'm not going to say too much more. I look forward to hearing from you guys to see what you think, and inevitably I look forward to talking to FilmBusters Paul and FilmBusters Adam when we inevitably disagree over this film. But when I say disagree, I did not hate this film. I did not love this film. But I liked it. I'm trying to work out how much I liked it. Until then,
FilmBusters.